Do you want to know how to set up your car in F1 Clash so you get the very best results and win most of your duels? Then stay tuned because we're going to dive in straight away to how to set that car up so it is optimized for the very best circuit and very best results. Yes, welcome along then. Today we are talking all things F1 Clash and the car setup. One of the most important features that determines how well you perform in a weekend or a dual purpose. So really, this is a video that you need to keep an eye on. You need to look all the way through as well because it's going to help you out tremendously, bring you up to speed with the best setups in the game and what you need to prioritize. So last season, it saw us have a predominantly cornering setup. Last season, if you were running heavy cornering, you were one of the quickest cars out there because anyone who was running speed, well, it practically didn't exist. But now that is all changed going into the new F1 Clash 2024 season. So you need to pay attention because things are going to start getting a little bit different. Now, think of it like real world. F1. Now let's excuse sprint races. F1 drivers and teams have 3 practice sessions. They have practice 1, practice 2, practice 3. The reason they have them practice sessions is for the drivers to get up to speed with the circuit, but also the team to set up that car to optimize its downforce, its ride height, you name it. They go through all 3 practice sessions and find out what is best. Now, this is, in theory, now the same as F1 Clash. Your duels is where you practice with the track stats and you find out what works for you. You've got different tracks for different stats. It's what players have been calling for instead of one fits all. Now we have to think, do we want speed? Do we want cornering? Do we need power unit? Do we need qualifying? In F1, exactly the same. Does a car want to be the fastest over a single lap to get qualifying, or does it want to run a bit more balanced and be effective more often? That's what you've got to now weigh up, and track stats heavily features in this. So one thing before we get into it is setups, and I've got one team loadout. That's because I'm not currently in a club, but you're going to need as many loadouts as you can, and getting more loadouts is done by being in a club. The higher that club, the more loadouts you get. So you can see at the moment, I've only got one. Now I'm going to have to change this to every single circuit to how the track stats should be. You want more than that. So the idea is get yourself in a club first of all. And you can see here, I will accept a request to go into a club, which I will join. And then I will go back to my setups. And because we're in a high division, I have now unlocked some beautiful setups. You can see, here we go, all the way through. There's a lot of setups there as well. So now suddenly, by a click of a button, I can change to what I want. So again, think of it this way. Duels is your practice ground. This is your practice 1, 2, and 3. Your GP event in the middle, you can see here, is your weekend race, your weekend sprint race, your weekend full race. And that is where points are the prizes. We don't get paid out for practice sessions. In this case, we do, though, in duels. So this season, we saw the introduction of track stats. Each track having a potential different track stat, one component stat, one driver stat. So this is what we have to adjust to now for your setup. And some series are easier than others. So for example, race start series 6, you obviously want race start drivers. And then the other track stat changes for the tracks. You've got speed, cornering, and you've got power unit. So a little bit more tricky to set your car up, but you've got a predominant driver stat that you need to prioritize. Take that to series 7, power play, which is the power unit circuit. So you can see at the bottom, power unit stays the same all the way through. Now, what setup would you think you need for series 7? A power unit. Sure. It's got to be. There's no point running anything different. It's got to be a power unit track stat and a power unit setup. And then everything else changes, race start, tyre management, defending, overtaking. That is where you prioritize your driver. Now in duels, you can't prioritize as much because that changes and you don't know which circuit you're going to get. However, I usually go for a good race start driver, seems to help me off the grid better overall, but for your car, it's got to change. Now, for series where it's a little bit more different, so you can see in Series 8, it's a defending track stat priority. You've got defending in each track. Now, this is how I would set my car up. You've got a power unit circuit. You've got a cornering circuit, so 1 and 1. You've also got a speed circuit, so you've got 3, if I get my fingers right, different circuits. And then we've got a cornering circuit. So 50% of it is basically covered in a cornering. So what I'd be potentially doing is going for a cornering setup or a slightly more cornering setup like you will see in my C loadout 4. So slightly a little bit more cornering, but also prioritizing a bit of that speed, a bit of that power unit, a bit of that qualifying in there as well, because I can't determine which track I'm going to get. Some's going to favour me more. And when you get matchups as well, they might have a setup that's better than that track. So you've just got to play it with a little bit more of a balanced setup. Whereas if I'm going to that Series 7, which is a power unit circuit, then this is literally what I've gone for. Now, your parts are going to be completely different to what I've got. Your levels are going to be completely different to what I've got. But you've got to prioritize the track stat, especially on the car. So you can see here for Series 7, I mean, this is way higher than Series 7. This is what I'd be using. Forget speed, forget cornering, in theory, forget qualifying. And it's one of them balancing acts again. Do you want a really fast car, but start a little bit further back on the grid and slice your way through the pack? That is what this setup does. 9 times out of 10, you'll be out qualified because we haven't prioritized qualifying, but we're going to be so quick in the race. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that, you can obviously reduce the stats down a little bit. You can take off some of that power unit, put up your cornering, your qualifying. So don't add speed or cornering at a power unit dependent track. Only add power unit or take a little bit off and add a little bit of qualifying. But remember, your driver has qualifying too. Your driver doesn't have power unit. So this is why we have set these up. So whatever you can get out of your car for this track stat, do it. This is our speed setup. As you can see, speed prioritized. Everything else, forget it. I'm going full speed. And in GP, that is exactly what you want to do. In duels, you can do it as well. But quite often, you just fly through the pack, catch your opponent up, and they think, how the hell have you started 10 places back and you've absolutely smashed me? Obviously, the cornering setup, again, heavy cornering. Forget everything else. That when you get to a Series 11, a Series 5, I think it is, your cornering is absolutely key. And then you can see here, power unit, the power unit setup. And then loadout 4 being your balanced off setup, which you're going to want to go and put in because that is going to be helping you with your qualifying, your cornering when you've got one of them series like Series 8 where you can't get it. But that then does lead to drivers. Got to be drivers and who you look at using. So obviously, if it's a defending driver, you want to be going to find out a driver with good defending, good race start. You can see here Hamilton. If I wanted a race start driver, then you can see at max level, Hamilton is 99. So I want to prioritize that. You want to look at all these elements. Perez got good time management. He's got okay defending as well. You got George Russell, who's got good defending. He's got decent race start, decent tyre management. So you've got to pick your drivers as well, dependent on the track stat. So if it's an overtaking, you want to go in there to somebody like, I think it's Max Verstappen, who has really good overtaking, and he's got 99 of that at max level. So you want to be doing the same. When you get to race start series, so let's go through the series again just to update you and how to pick your setups. Series 2 is all about a defending driver. So make sure you've got your driver with the highest defending stats, and then you've got 2 tracks, which are power unit. So you want to be either prioritizing power unit or a slightly balanced, but more to power unit, and the defending driver. Series 2, well, that was Series 1, wasn't it? Series 2 is tyre management. So your driver's tyre management is going to get a big boost, and you want to got power unit, cornering, speed. So 2 cornering tracks in Series 2. So prioritize cornering over pretty much most things, or balance it out again. Series 3, all about speed. You can see there 2 speed, 3 speed, 4 speed, because it is a speed series. Your setup needs to be that setup 1 that we had needs to be speed. Series 4 is all about overtaking. So it's overtaking drivers that you want to be using in Series 4 and overtaking boosts. We've got a track for speed, cornering, power unit, and power unit. So 2 tracks. The majority of tracks are built on power unit circuits. Series 5, cornering. You've got cornering defending, cornering overtaking, cornering race start, cornering tyre management. So you've got 1 track stat per driver, different, and then you've got cornering. So you want a cornering setup as best you can. Recommend a race start probably in here because it's going to get you the best start off the grid. 6 is all about race start of your driver. So again, pick a good driver like Hamilton. I think Russell's got okay race start too. So you want to be looking at that. You've got a race start speed, cornering, and power unit. So 2 tracks prioritized with speed that you want to use in Series 6. Or again, balance it out slightly, increase your speed a little bit. Series 7 we've been through is a power play with Series 8 defending. So we've already been through them two. Series 9 moves back to speed. So we've got speed. We've got race start, tyre management. We've got overtaking and defending. So 1 of each. So you can't really prioritize a driver, but I prefer to go race start. Series 10 is back to overtaking on your driver stat. And you've got power unit, cornering, power unit. So power unit predominantly featured. So you could go power unit with a slightly balanced down setup, but slightly more power unit. Series 11 is all about the cornering. You've got cornering, defending, cornering, overtaking, race start, tyre management again. And then Series 12 is all about a mix. So you've got race start, but you've got speed, cornering, and power unit. So speed you want to be using in Series 12 actually with a race start driver or boost 2. Now remember in GP at the moment sees track circuits stay the same as they are in duels. So if you come to here and you look at the tracks that are in GP, let's take Zandvoort, for example, track number 1 in qualifying. And we've got Barcelona. So if we go and find Zandvoort in the race duels, here it is. So we know this track stat is overtaking and cornering. So we need to be picking this track stat for our setup and our drivers. And then we go to Spain. Tyre management and cornering is your track stats, which you need to prioritize for your driver and your car when you come to that track. Remember to change your setup, your drivers, per the track that you are on. You can see, remind you, balance setup, power unit, cornering, depending on which one you've got. Obviously, sometimes you can't completely change them out, but you can see here I've got a decent power unit level and a decent qualifying stat. I've got my power unit setup, cornering setup, and speed setup. And remember, for clubs, you can see here divisions, and this is how you get more loadouts. So if you start your club from rookie, you only get 1 team loadout. And if you get promoted each month, you can work your way up to champion and 5 team loadouts. That will have a massive impact. If you prioritize the track stats of your car, you're going to be so much quicker in the races as well. So fingers crossed that helps you. You go and build that setup and you're going to be very, very quick now when you change them setups around and focus on the track stats.